neglected and manipulated by my family. How I freed myself and turned my life around. I don't even know where to begin, but I feel like I need to get this out. Everything I've experienced so far has left its mark on me in ways I only understood later. My name is Enrique, I'm 32 years old, and the feeling I've carried since childhood is of always being invisible in my own home. I grew up amid privileges that were never mine, always in the shadow of my sister Beatriz, who received all the praise, attention and care from my mother Ana Clara and the condescending silence of my father Jose Antonio. My reality was always being available to solve problems that weren't even mine, supporting emotional crises that should have been the responsibility of the one who gave me life, and still dealing with the constant feeling of not being enough. I was the supporter, the safe haven, the cashier, the shoulder to cry on, but never the truly beloved son. Whenever I tried to express my frustration or ask for help, I was ignored or reminded that Beatriz needed more, that I should be strong, responsible, and resilient. Not that I mind responsibilities, but when the love and care that should be reciprocated are absent, it eats away at me. Life taught me independence too early, and it hurt more than I can put into words. But what changed everything, what made me realize this situation couldn't continue, was something no one expects: my own body breaking down. I was at a professional event, something I'd planned months in advance, the culmination of a project that had taken years of dedication. Halfway through the presentation, I felt my chest tighten, my breath catch, and my vision begin to blur. Adrenaline took over, but my body warned me I was on the verge of collapse. I looked out at the audience and realized I couldn't go on. It was terrible. The fear of fainting in public, of dying right there, mixing with the anger I'd carried for years toward my own family. I called my father, hoping for some kind of help, and he simply said I should take better care of myself and stop overexerting myself. My mother didn't even answer. Beatriz? Of course, she was too busy with her own life to even care. In that moment, the realization hit me. I was alone. There was no one who truly cared if I lived or died, and it hit me like a knife. The feeling of abandonment and devaluation exploded within me, along with the real fear of losing my own life. It was the first time I realized that, despite all the years of effort, my well-being had never mattered to them. In the hospital, between doctors and tests, I relived my entire childhood in flashbacks, memories of asking for attention and being ignored, of helping Beatriz through crises that weren't my own, of watching my parents melt for her while I learned to hide. The diagnosis was clear: overload, extreme stress, and profound emotional neglect. But what truly stood out was the silence of my heart. Not just the physical, but the emotional. I felt every failure of my family like a literal weight on my chest. It was humiliating, but also liberating. For the first time, I understood that it wasn't my obligation to support anyone's emotional well-being, but my own. Anger mixed with sadness, but it also brought clarity. If I wanted to survive and have a life worth living, I would need to make drastic decisions. And not just small routine changes. I would need to cut toxic ties, establish boundaries that never existed, and face the fear of being rejected by my own family. In the days that followed, I woke with a fatigue that went beyond the physical. My body was recovering, but my mind was racing. I considered giving up, ignoring my family, isolating myself, but I also realized that running away wasn't enough. I needed to transform this pain into action. That's when I found strength in my friend and lawyer, Luisa. She didn't offer generic advice. She didn't just say, "You'll be fine." She helped me see that there were concrete paths: financial reorganization, revoking joint accounts, selling properties that kept my family dependent on me. For the first time, I felt like I could have real control over my own life. The presence of someone impartial who truly cared gave me the courage to see possibilities where before I only saw emotional prisons. Louisa helped me put into words what I could barely admit. I needed to free myself, and not just for myself, but to prove to myself that I deserve respect, dignity, and peace. The first step was painful. Talking to my parents about financial limits, about independence, was a reality check. Ana Clara reacted with tears and accusations. Beatrice freaked out, trying to manipulate the situation so she wouldn't lose her privileges. My father remained passive, but his silence didn't shake me this time. I realized the strength I needed wasn't in their approval, but in myself. Every decision, from closing accounts to selling properties, that kept my sister dependent was a test of courage. Deep down, I feared that cutting these ties would destroy the few remaining bonds, but I realized that worthwhile bonds aren't maintained out of fear or obligation. They're maintained out of respect, love, and reciprocity. And I never had that at home, so nothing I lost would be real anyway. The physical sensation of power and fear mingled was intense, each sleepless night reminding me that I was finally doing something for myself. For the first time, I felt like my life was truly in my hands. The following days were a true test of endurance. Every contact with my family was an emotional battle. Beatrice insisted on calling in tears, complaining about how unfair I was being, manipulating my childhood memories to try to make me feel guilty. Ana Clara tried to show concern, but every gesture was accompanied by indirect remarks, as if I were exaggerating or being ungrateful. My father remained passive, watching everything without intervening. At first, every call, every message made me doubt myself. Anger and sadness mixed with the guilt I'd carried for years, and at times, I almost gave up on the whole process. It was too exhausting. My body was still fragile, my mind exhausted, and the feeling of fighting alone was overwhelming. I even thought it might be easier to simply give in, to return to the role of emotional and financial provider I'd always had, but something inside me refused to accept this surrender. I remembered the collapse, the tightness in my chest, the feeling of nearly losing my life, and realized that giving in would mean condemning myself to remain invisible and devalued. That's when I decided that any discomfort that arose would be fleeting compared to the freedom I sought. Louisa was crucial at this time. She helped me organize all the documents, bills, and records that clearly demonstrated my contribution to the family's life and their neglect of me. Each contract revoked, each property sold was a concrete step toward emancipation. Still, the feeling of betraying family expectations was strong. I felt guilty, insecure, but also more alive than ever. She reminded me that setting boundaries wasn't selfishness, but emotional survival. Some days I felt like quitting, like giving up on everything because the emotional pressure was so immense. But Louisa always pulled me back, reminding me that I wasn't just defending myself, but building a life truly worthwhile. With each small victory, each decision made, I felt the weight of years of neglect slowly dissipate. In the midst of this reorganization, I discovered secrets that completely changed my perception of my own life. Medical information my mother and sister had hidden, decisions made without my knowledge that could have put my health at risk. The anger I felt was overwhelming, mixed with a sense of relief at finally discovering the truth. For years, I had blindly trusted my family, and now I understood that trust wasn't enough. Proof, action, and boundaries were needed. Each document I reviewed was a reminder that I cannot allow my life to be controlled by people who don't value me. I was surprised at myself for being able to handle this mixture of shock, fear, and anger, and even more surprised at feeling that despite everything, I was stronger than I ever imagined. The rebuilding process wasn't linear. I had days of weakness when I felt alone and helpless, wishing my parents or my sister would recognize my efforts, that they would value me. But I learned that I can't depend on validation from those who never gave me genuine support. I learned to value small achievements, being able to sleep without fear of tomorrow, being able to make decisions without guilt, feeling that my work and dedication truly matter to someone who won't manipulate me. I discovered that emotional freedom is as vital as physical health or financial stability. Each step was painful, but necessary. Each sleepless night reflecting on what I had to do was an investment in my future peace. The physical impact was also intense. My body still bore the scars of the collapse, palpitations, extreme fatigue, difficulty concentrating. But I realized this wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather a wake-up call. I had to learn to listen to my body and respect my limits, something I'd never done before. Before, my life revolved around what others needed, and my health always came last. Now, taking care of myself became a top priority. Louisa helped me create routines that respected my recovery, balancing legal, financial, and emotional decisions with moments of rest and self-care. For the first time, I realized that self-care isn't selfish, but the foundation for any healthy relationship, whether with friends, partners, or family. There came a time when I realized there was no turning back. I could give in, wear myself out, and continue serving as emotional support for people who never cared about me, or I could take a firm stand and reclaim my own life. It was scary because I would face explosive reactions from my family, especially Beatrice, who refused to accept losing control over me. Every call from her was a desperate attempt to manipulate me with tears, accusations, and memories of times when I'd failed by not acquiescing to her whims. My mother tried to smooth things over, but everything she said had a passive-aggressive tone, reminding me that I owed gratitude and obedience. My father, as always, remained neutral, but for the first time, none of these reactions shook me as they had before. I realized that the strength came from within, from recognizing that I deserve respect and care, even if they never give it to me. Each decision became clearer. I needed to cut toxic ties and establish unbreakable boundaries. The first major concrete action was to revoke their access to my accounts and finances. Beatrice freaked out as expected and threatened to expose secrets and create social conflict. I felt a pang of real fear, but Louisa reminded me that the documents were correct and that each action was legally secure. Reselling properties that maintained outbuildings was also difficult. Some days it felt like I was destroying irreparable family ties, but I realized those ties were never genuine. Each step freed me emotionally, but it still required enormous strength to deal with the guilt the family tried to impose on me. I was learning that freeing yourself doesn't mean hurting others. It means protecting yourself. During this process, I began to uncover more hidden truths. Medical information that put me at risk was revealed, decisions made without my knowledge, and subtle manipulations that lasted for years. I felt anger, but also a strange sense of relief. I finally knew the extent of the negligence. Each discovery reinforced that I wasn't exaggerating, that my perception of childhood and adulthood was correct. It was at this point that I realized my emotions were valid and that my limits weren't exaggerated. For the first time, I felt truly in control of my story, no longer held hostage by other people's expectations. The internal struggle was still constant. Some nights, I would wake up in a cold sweat, remembering the years I'd spent trying to please everyone and always feeling inadequate. It was a mixture of fear, anger, sadness, and a sense of betrayal. But I was also beginning to feel something I'd never known before: genuine pride in myself. Every small victory, every step toward autonomy, every firm decision was proof that I could indeed sustain myself emotionally and financially without relying on those who had never valued me. I began to realize that the pain I felt didn't have to paralyze me, it could propel me forward. Amidst all this chaos, I found strength in Louisa's friendship, but also in myself. I learned to listen to my own limits, respect my body, mind, and emotions. Each step in the process of emancipation was accompanied by fear, but also determination. I understood the path would be long and difficult, but I was finally building something real, my own life, based on conscious choices, respect, and autonomy. For the first time, I felt that peace was possible, even amidst the pain I still carried. Over time, I began to feel the true difference between being emotionally dependent on someone and having autonomy. The first few weeks after cutting off financial access and selling properties were tense. Beatriz tried everything: emotional blackmail, threats, even petty social intrigue trying to weaken me. My mother continued to use indirect language, as if I were unfair for distancing myself from such a fragile daughter. My father, silent, watched from afar. But I realized that the strength didn't come from their approval, but from the certainty that they were protecting me. Every ignored call, every blackmail I refused to give in, strengthened my confidence. I felt my body respond. Less tension in my chest, more peaceful nights, and a sense of mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I didn't wake up thinking about how to please or support someone who didn't care about me. I was living for myself. The most difficult moments were Beatriz's outbursts. She cried, complained, and accused, trying to make me feel guilty. Some days, my anger nearly exploded, and I considered giving in so that temporary peace could return. But Luisa constantly reminded me that true peace only exists when there is respect, and that I shouldn't trade my dignity for the emotional comfort of others. I began to feel more grounded, realizing that my emotional freedom had real value. Every reaction of hers that had previously shaken me was now just noise. I was learning to distinguish manipulation from legitimate need, and that completely changed the dynamic. In the midst of this process, I rediscovered my social life and my own interests. I started going out, traveling, and investing in personal projects I'd always put off. The feeling of living without constant family pressure was liberating. At the same time, I felt the physical and emotional impact of years of neglect, fatigue, anxiety, and the constant memory of past crises. But for the first time, I felt I had enough energy to invest in myself, without fear of emotional exhaustion due to external manipulation. My routine completely changed. Meetings, projects, self-care, and time for friends and hobbies. I felt like each small achievement was a building block in the construction of a life that was finally mine. I also discovered that I was able to deal with the past without being paralyzed by it. I began writing about my experiences, talking to people with similar stories, and even helping friends navigate toxic relationships. The pain was still there, but it was transformed into learning and strength. Each memory of abandonment or manipulation that I revisited became less of a burden and more of a reminder that I survived. My body responded positively, my mind became clearer, and my heart, despite the scars, learned to trust myself again. The final confrontation with my parents happened calmly but firmly. I exposed all the evidence of neglect and financial abuse, explained my decisions, and made it clear that my life was being reorganized for my own good. Ana Clara tried to pressure me emotionally. Beatriz tried to manipulate me with tears and memories of the past, and my father simply watched. But this time, none of it shook me. I felt a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. I was in control of my own life, finally living by my own rules, with established and respected boundaries. For the first time, I felt I had the peace and autonomy I'd always deserved, even if parts of the pain remained. Today, looking back, I see how much I've grown and how much the pain I carried taught me about boundaries, respect, and autonomy. It wasn't easy to emotionally detach myself from people who were always physically present, but never truly cared for me. I learned that family isn't just blood, it's those who respect, support, and value your existence. My hands, once tied by years of manipulation, finally hold my own life. I feel the lightness of making decisions without fear of emotional retaliation, the freedom to prioritize my mental and physical health. Each choice I've made has brought me closer to myself and the life I always deserved. Today, I can sleep without the weight of the past suffocating my chest, something that seemed impossible months ago. Rediscovering my social life and interests was liberating. I began investing in projects I'd always dreamed of, traveling alone and with friends, and even opening myself up to new relationships without fear of repeating old patterns. I felt I could build connections based on respect and reciprocity, something I never had at home. Each step in this process made me realize that overcoming grief isn't about forgetting the past, but learning from it, transforming pain into strength and creating a reality where you are a priority. My life became a conscious choice, and this brought peace I never imagined possible. The greatest lesson I've learned is that no one is obligated to remain in relationships that harm their emotional health. There's no obligation to please, support, or sacrifice for someone who doesn't recognize your worth. I had to reach my limit, almost lose my life to finally understand this. Every tear, every moment of despair, every emotional crisis shaped me, but also prepared me for the freedom that is now my reality. I realized that true strength comes from within, and that even when the world seems against you, it's always possible to forge your own path. Today, I still deal with some memories and pain from the past, but they don't paralyze me. I've learned to listen to my body and my emotions and to say no without guilt. The autonomy I've gained has become my greatest asset, and every action I take is to protect my health, my peace, and my dignity. I'm proud of myself and the courage I had to face manipulation, fear, and uncertainty. I know my story can inspire others to set boundaries and seek the emotional freedom they deserve, even if it means confronting family members or loved ones. If I could say just one thing to anyone going through similar situations, you don't need to expect recognition from those who never valued you. Overcoming is possible, even amid pain, neglect, and manipulation. It's a long road full of ups and downs, but each step toward autonomy is a real victory. Today, I live for myself. I make my own rules, and I find peace where before there was only abandonment and frustration. My life finally belongs to me.